I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Fred Gordy. I'm with SmartCore, which is based out of Charlotte, but also we have a team in Atlanta, and that's who I'm a member of. I'd like to thank Critical Facilities for the opportunity to speak with you today and talk about a subject that's become my passion and my mission, which is cybersecurity for building control systems specifically. Building control systems are also referred to as BAS, so if you hear that term, that's what I'm talking about. This video that we just watched, let me point out first, it was uploaded in 2011, so when they make a reference to last year, it's actually 2010. This particular attack set up a new precedence, and that precedence is we're not just necessarily looking, the bad guys are not necessarily looking to hack into credit card information, that kind of thing. And we'll go into that a little bit further and tell you, some of the new things that are coming out that the bad guys are doing. Before we get started, I also want to give you a little background on myself, a little bit more in depth. Prior to 2001, I was an IT guy. When 2001 rolled around, this company called me up one day and said, "Hey, we think your resume fits what we do." And I said, okay. So I go up there, and I don't think this is something you should normally do in an interview, but the first thing that I asked them after we went through everything that they did, I said, "Are you sure you got the right guy?" Because the only thing I knew about a control system was to keep the air cool and people comfortable. But they hired me anyway. So from there, I cut my teeth on large enterprise systems. I also worked on power monitoring for a large internet data center provider. Let's just say that. In 2006, I went to work for the Southeast's largest mechanical contractor. And that was the particular customers we work with. Again, these guys can't afford the brand damage that might come from a cybersecurity attack. 2012, if you guys were paying attention to some of the stuff going back and forth on the Washington Post and all, that's when probably the first time that building control systems were put in the spotlight so far as the vulnerabilities that were concerned. This in particular, there were two guys, Billy Rios and Terry McCorkle. I don't know if you're familiar with their names, but these are the guys that I kind of call the ones that called it out the loudest, let's just say that. And so there's a lot of back and forth, really bad time at that time. So what I decided to do is reach out to these guys. I didn't know if they were going to talk to me or not. And this is, both of them turned out to be really good guys, and I had them come in and attack our system and give me some reports. The reports were just for me, not to put out there. And I would say both of these guys have become mentors and friends, but this is also, I think, the point in which the passion for what I do now was ignited. And I don't know how many guys in here are actually in the facility groups. Real quick, just out of curiosity, facility groups? Okay. Well, if I'm from your world now. I'm not an IT guy. And the premise has always been, well, this is the way we've always done it. Who cares about the cyber protecting a control system? My boss at SmartCore uses the term, Fred's been pushing rope for years. And I got to say it's felt like that for a while, but I feel like now people are beginning to understand that we've got a lot of systems out there that are inherently vulnerable, so therefore we need to do whatever we can. Now, I want to make a reference to how things can go even further beyond the actual breach. And it's not even, in some cases, it's not even your fault. I keep forgetting I need to be up closer to the mic. Sorry, guys. You guys hear about the Target breach, all right? Right at first, the company, mechanical contractor like the one that I was working for, all of a sudden the news came out that they were the reason that Target got hacked. Well, I did just like everybody else, and I went to the website, and guess what I found? Bandwidth exceeded. What that means is everybody in the world, or the United States at least, was trying to see this bad mechanical contractor. So the damage was done before anybody was taken to court. The brand damage for this Fazio Mechanical, I can say it because it's all over the web. But you can't. I don't know how you can monetize that. The brand damage in itself could be huge before the lawsuits, and we'll talk about some other things that have developed. But while I was doing this, or preparing for this, I saw an article on Krebs on security. And this is literally while I was putting this together. According to a Verizon report, it actually did come through Fazio, and it came from somebody inside of Fazio that actually clicked an email. Once the email was clicked, these guys had basically direct access into the system and then direct access to every cash register, according to this Verizon report. So with that said, just one email, somebody clicked on it, and it gave them the usernames and passwords for the system. Now, what we're going to talk about today, discuss what basic cybersecurity measures should be used in place to protect a building automation system, analyze how FM and IT teams should coordinate to prevent unwanted access, review existing and emerging threats to critical facility cybersecurity measures, and then last, assess the solutions to a variety of threats and their overall impact on facilities. Now, if you'll notice this map, you guys may already be, has anybody ever seen these type of maps? What this is real-time threats, real-time attacks going on right now worldwide. There's a couple of companies, Kaspersky, Norris Corp, and also FortGuard, FireEye, Checkpoint Digital Attack Map, and I reference those in there. Also, I have had the opportunity to work with the people at Georgia Tech, and those people process 250,000 unique pieces of malware a day. Now, anybody familiar with Shodan? If you're not familiar with it, get familiar. The reason I say that, it's been called by CNN Money the scariest search engine on the web. After using it, I also see some validity in using it, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But what Shodan does is it continually scans the internet for connected devices. And I've had people say, well, they can't do that. It's on the public web. They can do. It's just like looking for a website set with specific scripting. It's free to use. You can get a free account today. Sign up, go search for your stuff, and see if it shows up. I got the paid account. The only thing that it does is it brings in a few more tool sets, but if you're just doing for the purpose of researching, it's a pretty handy tool. Now, you don't have to know a specific query language. If you'll notice, all I did was I put a search for SNMP, and this is the results from September the 10th. I tried to keep them current. According to Shodan, there's 190,000 SNMP devices exposed. I don't know about you, but SNMP to me says it's probably more data center related. There, in the United States, there's 7,200. Now, if I want to find out what I can do to this system, I can just go ahead and click the details, and it pops up. Notice across the top, and I picked on my city, Atlanta, but across the top, that's a geoloc of the IP. Now, that could be the internet service provider. I don't know. But there are all the ports listed. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but down at the bottom, it talks about an APC SNMP web-enabled SNMP management card. If I blow that up, I can take that information and I can go on the web. Let me see, it didn't pop. Okay, there we go. I can go on the web, and as you guys, I know I'm telling you stuff you know, but you can download the PDF. I want to find out the default username and password. Well, I would expect they probably changed it, right? There's the PDF. I search for username, APC, and I'm not picking on APC, understand that, okay? Because I'm a system integrator, that's my background. This is what we did, all right? The next thing I can do, if I don't find the PDF, I can just type search for default username and passwords. There's a website called Tech by Tom. You recognize any of those names? APC. There's a whole longer list. There's also one called Zcure, kind of like Secure. I don't know if you're familiar with that platform. Now I can go look for the MIB files. I can download the MIB files, and since I'm already in the system, if they hadn't set up the security, I can go in there and write to anything that I want to. I can pretty much do whatever I need to do. Now, next I search for chillers. You guys got anybody in here familiar with central plants and that type of thing? Okay. So, look real close at what it gave us. It's a Tracer SC. It tells me now what controller is on that chiller. I don't know why you would expose a chiller to the web, but that's obviously what has happened. I have an instance ID, and that alone pretty much tells me it's a BACnet device. And if you didn't know, among security researchers, pen testers and the bad guys, BACnet is like a sitting duck. I had a guy come to our training facility one time, and he didn't know what any of these things were hanging up on the wall. I told him a little bit about it, and when I said the word BACnet, he literally grinned. And he said, "Can I have a crack at it?" And I had programs in these BACnet devices. He went in and wrecked them in about 5 minutes. So he did that with my permission, of course. Now, so I just typed the word data center. I was hoping I saw what I was going to get was 0, but I actually got thousands of these. And if you look real quick, there are the IP address that I can literally click and go into that device. Down below, oh, it's an an APC switched rack. That's on the web. I looked for UPSs, and I clicked the link, and that's what popped up. I didn't do anything while I was there. I did look in at that saw that I did have the rights to change the username and password. I had the rights to do pretty much whatever I wanted to do. There's a ASCO server. This one, I believe, is an ATS piece, software. Now, this gives you an idea. This is in Shodan, still in Shodan. They have a mapping capability. Every little red dot you see represents an exposed system. In the exposed system for this particular manufacturer. I blanked out the name on purpose. But as you can see, there's 30,000 plus connected devices in the world of this manufacturer. In the U.S., there's over 18,000 alone. And you can look down through there. I'm looking at particular state by state. Okay, so I just typed in U.S. See that number at the top? That's what we're doing. It's 119,690,433 exposed devices. So, and then out to the side, I guess that's Cambridge, Massachusetts, 16 million. Houston, 2.7 million, so on and so forth. So, now we get down to ask yourself. This is a principle I learned a while back. You really need to stop and take a self-assessment. So you need to ask yourself some questions. Are any of my devices exposed with public IP? If you don't know, you need to know. You might want to use Shodan. In 2013, Google War 7, that's one of Google's data centers down in Australia, I think it is. Going back to my buddies Billy and Terry, they were called upon by Google to take a look at their buildings. And they hit this one right off the bat, Google War 7. They went into the system. It didn't touch the network. It was an air gap between the other networks, but it's controlling this center. Okay, so what they did was they were actually able to go in, and this prior to this 3 or 4 years ago, they were able to go into the system of the station that was on that machine, pull out the files. It's in plain English, the username, the password. They cracked it in a matter of minutes, and they got in. Well, they decided, okay, and this particular control system also tells you who the vendor is, who the system integrator is. So they did a search for some other devices. They found a hospital that this integrator had put on. Again, I'm pointing the finger at me. Not that we did this one, but integrators, we need to tighten up. Anyway, so what they proved right there is that integrator moving from site to site to site is putting his default username and password in it, which is, in a sense, is fine, but not in this climate we have today. Just as a joke, or to me it seems like a joke, their default username and password was admin and then anyone's guess. The password was all one word, anyone guess. If remote access is available other ways than public IP, and who manages it? Is a vendor-provided solution by the vendor, or was it provided by you? It's been my experience, and it's not uncommon for integrators to provide the remote connectivity. It was easier for FM and IT, for the integrator to provide it. IT didn't have to manage it, and FM didn't have to follow guidelines, the IT guidelines. Everybody wins, right? No. Even with all the breaches and varying attack vectors, there are still holdouts. Excuse me. There's still holdouts. Personal experience. One of our customers had already been breached, and their control system was exposed on the public. It had a public IP in it. It wasn't the point of breach that they came through was the control system. That wasn't it. The thing is, the control system was controlling the data center for credit card processing, running that particular headquarters building. And the building engineer, the head guy, didn't think he had a problem after a breach. So I literally had to go in there, and it took me 2 hours to convince him that, hey, first off, you've already been in a breach. His argument was it's an air gap network. I'm not touching the corporate information. I said, no, but you're controlling the crack units and the air handlers, everything in the data center. If I wanted to shut servers off, I could just jack up the temperature in there pretty quick, and some of them would start shutting off. But also, it had access to his generators, his automatic transfer switches, his battery backup, so on and so forth. So, the biggest reason he was fighting was, well, this is going to add one more step that I got to go through. I got to authenticate one other place before I come into my system. He didn't want to do it. Now, is the front end used strictly to serve up web pages, log control informations, etc.? That's a no-brainer, right? That's what they're using them for. Nope. I was asked by a property management group that actually had Google in their building, and they said we need to have an assessment on our control system. So I knew the username and password because we installed it, and it was available on the web through a remote client. I just wanted to first go in and just take a look at the system. As soon as I logged in, I let go of the mouse and the keyboard because I wanted to see what was going on. I didn't want to interfere with it. And the building engineer was sitting on the front end. He was looking at Facebook. Then he went and he checked his email. Then he went over to a financial network, his stocks or whatever. Anyway, but the thing also that struck me was across the top banner of that browser that he had opened on the thing that's controlling their building, the add-ins were that thick. You know, the little plug-in pieces that everybody puts into their browser, they had just a bunch of them. So I can safely say that, no, this one wasn't being used strictly for that. This building engineer, when the report was turned in, he wasn't my friend anymore. But at least they got their system off the web. Do you know if your end devices are physically secure? End devices being generators, chiller plants, VAVs, so on and so forth. Anything that is actually doing something, are they physically secure? Now, if they're in the building, are they actually in something that's locked up? And if they're outside the building, do you have any kind of camera that you could see what's going on, any kind of alerting, intrusion alerts, that type of thing? Most, I would say, do not. Who manages it? This one, as I got back, like I said, I came from IT, and then when I moved into the control system world, I got lulled into that sense of security like everybody else, security through obscurity. But then transitioning back, I said, you know, this was like, you got to be kidding. Typically, I'm not going to say in all cases, but typically, if somebody is a vendor integrator has installed a system, he's usually the one that manages it, manages the users. All I can do is relate to personal experience. Building engineer, not knocking anybody that's facility because you got your hands full just like IT does. But sorry, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, the vendor goes in and he sets up the username and passwords. Okay. The facility guy, all he cares about is keeping the building on, keeping people comfortable, keeping critical equipment up. I literally had this happen. One of my guys got called to a service call, and because the guy said his control system was gone. And so we took a look into it, and what it was we had created him a icon on his desktop with the URL in it, and somebody deleted it. But to him, his control system was gone. So, but the main point here is, if you don't know if you're managing your users, you need to find that out. And then have the manufacturers and or system integrators default credentials been removed. I would say that we're still, I don't know, 80% of the systems out there probably still have the manufacturer's default username and password in it. Maybe not, but that's been my experience. Are your passwords changed on a regular and reoccurring basis? All right. So most systems don't have an expiration. You can set up automatic expirations. The newer systems are getting better about that, but they're actually still got a long way to go. So if you don't have that in place now, this is gonna be hard to get started. We experienced it. Is You have to have somebody who is responsible and takes full command of making sure that the system usernames, passwords are changed on a reoccurring basis. Network access policy. We have to sign them. With certain customers, we have to sign that as well. You may or may not be doing this. If you're not doing it, you need to have a defined access policy that your users use to get on your system. It's not going to help you. It's not going to keep you from being breached, but what it is going to do is going to create a paper trail that, when the men in black come into your site and you need to be audited, you can at least point to that we are adhering to a policy here. Most systems don't have unique username and passwords. At least I'm not saying that there aren't unique usernames and passwords. There are, but there's probably one or two that you just hand out to whoever and say, "Oh, well, come on in." Do you have in place a vendor remove policy? Most don't, and I have gone into systems, in particular a large colo provider. I worked on their system in 2003. I can still get in it with that username and password. Okay. This is another one. There's a large entertainment group around where I live. They have server experts, they have generator experts, it goes on and on that they have experts. And we tried to convince them of this, but you need in-house a subject matter expert. No, he doesn't need to know how to program the system, but he really needs to know how to recover if the system goes bad, because your vendor may not make it there for several hours. But most places, my experience has been, I haven't run into somebody that really, maybe a couple of cases, that really knew the ins and outs of the control system. I have heard that one as much as I want to hear it. It speaks for itself. OT wasn't developed with patch management. Servers, everything else was. Why not OT? Well, at the time, it wasn't necessary. Expected life cycle is 15 plus years. An IT asset 3 to 5. Connected, they have inherent flaws, and you're not going to get rid of them anytime soon. If you got legacy systems, it's 15 years old. You know that's not protected. Us in the system integrator community pushed for this really, really hard. Open protocols where I could crosstalk between different vendor and manufacturers. Well, guess what? We got them, and that put us in the situation where we are now. And also, people are the downfall of any good security platform. You see it every day that it came through a human most of the time on the breach. And if you're not air-gapped, a control system can be used as a pivot point. They may not care about turning your lights on. They're just maybe looking for some way into your internet, into your network, and that's what they use as control system network if it's attached. I love this. I don't always find the funding I need, but when I do, it's usually after a breach. I would say that that's probably a true statement among everybody in here. In this basically what this is saying is it's going to cost money not only to secure your control system, but to change the security habits of your people. That's the one that's going to be an ongoing cost. You get new people, you got to retrain them. Remember, as I said earlier, before a lawsuit hits you, your brand could possibly be damaged and may never recover. Depending on how the breach was investigated, your company may not be able to function at full capacity, and this could, obviously you would lose revenue. The study by IBM said $3.8 million represented a 23% increase. This is 2013. But this figure at the bottom still holds true today, that per record cost of a breach is 145 to 154. So if you got 1 million records, do the math. This is something new to me. I saw it about a month ago. Wyndham got hacked in 2008, 2009, and the FTC is suing them because they weren't doing their due diligence. So now you have the bad guy, you have brand damage, you have loss of revenue, and you get the FTC come sue you, and if you weren't doing your part. You can look this up and read. I'm not going to read all the words, but basically it's just the head of FTC is talking about what they're going to do. And while I was doing this particular presentation, I ran up on this. Now the SEC, or Securities and Exchange Commission, is involved too. They can fine you. The quote here, to me, makes from Marshall S. Sprung, who's the head of this, says firms must adopt written policies to protect their clients' private information, and they need to anticipate potential cybersecurity events and have clear procedures in place rather than waiting for the breach once the breach occurs. The guy had a good idea. He locked his bike up. Where's the rest of his bike? All the bad guy needed to know was, I can get a pair of pliers, wrench, whatever. I can steal this bike, and then I'm going to go steal a tire from another bike. You know, that's what they do. So let's just say that guy got his bike, the guy that got his bike stolen, went out, and he got a bunch of locks, and he locked it all up, and there's no way that guy can drive. Who would want that? He had the keys all keyed the locks all keyed the same. Everybody using the same username and password? The key was dropped on the ground, so the bad guy comes up and just starts unlocking locks. And if somebody were to walk by and say, "What are you doing?" He has the key. He should be there, right? Now, no amount of security measures can withstand Dave. That's the human. All the firewalls in the world can be circumvented by Dave. And if you're Dave, I'm sorry, I'm not picking on you. I didn't do this. But the point here is that every person in IT every employee of a company should be involved in securing their facility. You can't just rely on IT to do it. And the reason is going to the point that humans are typically the breach point. If you're not familiar with social engineering, it's basically a con game. And it seems like everybody now thinks that that's a computer term, or came along with computers. Actually, it's been around thousands of years because it's a con game. More to it, but in the matter of 4 minutes, well, let me give you a little background first. The company, this really happened, and they really called an employee in a company. Now, the higher-ups at the company knew that this was going to happen. This is at DEF CON. The video's a little sketchy, but I think it's cell phone. But anyway, the point being is, inside of 5 minutes, they now have ownership of his machine. That's what you saw up on the side, just by him clicking it. And you hear what he was saying, the questions, he said the right thing. Of course, this is Kevin Mitnick, and if you know who that is, he's the first notable hacker. Now, and that ties with what we just saw. This is a study by Mandy Ant, and you can read everything. But on the far right, that's kind of shocking. 100% involve stolen credentials. And how does that happen? Humans. They can sort of be patched, and that's where the training comes in. And this means everybody in your organization, not IT. Not building systems, but everybody. Because that could have been somebody's employee walking down the street and they ask them, "What's your password?" I talked about in the beginning. Two ways that they have come to believe now is a thumb drive is one camp, and the other is that it was actually put into the system before it ever left the loading dock. So, IT and OT, operational technology. We've kind of created a void just because there wasn't, in some cases, necessary to talk to IT. Problem is through the years, you may have had a standalone air gap network, and then somebody inside the building wanted to see the control system, so a second network card was added. IT has enough to deal with, facilities have enough to deal with, so they really didn't interact. And basically, this is one of the other key factors that put us where we are. So, like I say, the networks began to merge, and now, for whatever reason, we are now stuck with systems that are intertwined, and one was basically built by a system integrator who just learned how to put in an IP address subnet and gateway, and how to crimp a Cat5 cable. And so the engineers, like I say, these are the particular types of pieces of equipment. Lots of changes were done to it. Again, those are typically in devices that you shouldn't be able to get to, but you can because of this particular architecture. And so IT and OT have to work together. There's no way around it. If you've got a network and you've got an IT staff and you've got a building facility management group, you need to have some liaison between there to be able to work together. Now, you need to do some things where you audit your network. You know what you have, you know where it is, you know what protocols it's talking, that particular type thing. You need to determine what is your, I don't want to call it low-hanging fruit because that cliche has been done to death. Basically, the things that you know you can get a hold of pretty quick, which is change everybody's password. If it's on the outside the internet, put it inside. The problem is traditional ICT software could cause a system to lock up because of the ports and that particular thing. I've run into that with a research facility. It can take it'll take quite a long time to do most of these if you're doing especially a large upgrade, 24 to 48 hours. And you also have to engage probably the system integrator, the chiller manufacturer, rep, York, not the rep, but the service guy, so on and so forth. And like I say, that there. Now, this is something that bit us in the rear end. Was we patched this system, and it was during the warmer weather. And so what we didn't realize is at the time was when we patched everything and re-downloaded the programs to the server pieces, it actually blew up some of the logic inside the controller that controlled the air handlers. And basically the air handlers always thought outside was 72 degrees. Well, there was a cold snap, 1 degree, but I don't know what it was. Anyway, point being is the air handler still responded as though it was 72 degrees outside. And so it blew all this cold air in. Chiller tripped off, some pipes burst, that kind of thing. So you can't just set it and forget it. You need to do some pre-testing of whatever patch you're going to do. And there is no plug and play. And what I mean by that is there are software that will monitor your network traffic. There's really not anything for building control systems yet, although we are working on it, and it will be coming. I've been working with a couple of companies that specialize in ICS SCADA, and we're working the nuances of a standard building control system. Antivirus can block the ports. As I said, ICS SCADA, and if you're not familiar with it, ICS is Industrial Control Systems. SCADA, I always get this one mixed up, is Supervisory control and data acquisition. They're not a set guideline. You can't pull a NIST standard. You can. I don't want to say you can't, but you're still going to have pieces that you're going to have to, that are just not going to fit. And put these out. Very self-explanatory. Document your control system. Know your network. Review the physical security. Remove consumer-grade IT equipment. That happens a lot. The integrator goes to a big box store, grabs a hub or switch or whatever off the shelf and puts it in place. It's not managed. You can't shut it off. We said it before, review and improve control system front end. Make sure that it's locked away without the keyboard and mouse on it. Because as I showed you earlier, building control people, not knocking them, but they may say, well, this is another PC I can get on the web with. Let IT have access to the system, even though there aren't necessarily plug-and-play solutions that will monitor the traffic. The reality is the control system will tell you what it's. IT can get out of their access logs, those type of things. And so in the event of something happens, you can at least do some forensics. And as I said earlier, the emerging threat, besides getting credit card information, is the thrill seekers. This is a German steel mill that last year somebody got into. It was a phishing attack that got them into the site, and then they went and found the furnace control systems, and they ran them up, and they couldn't shut them down properly. Germany won't say how much damage was done. They just said it was massive. Y'all have all heard about carjackings, and I know this is kind of getting outside the arena, but point being is all the vectors, anything that's connected, these guys are trying to go after. Medjacking, if you're not familiar with that, a couple of guys that I know that they actually built they're the good guys, but they built a virus that would take an insulin pump and tell it that your blood sugar was way lower than it was, and it would just sit there and pump till it killed you. Same thing with a pacemaker. Just set a time bomb off. These are the systems that you're more familiar with, and the top right is a frequency drive. That's what they attacked at Iran, the nuclear facility. I can get into that freak drive. I can disable the alarms where you won't know I'm in there, and because the network's not being tracked, you're not going to see me, and I could do some damage on that chiller depending on how it's set up, which would be a lot of money. But if I were able to get the pumps to go crazy and somebody happened to be standing by it, I could kill them. Generator, don't need to tell you what would happen if somebody actually did mess around with that. Transfer switch, the list goes on. But the point being is, everybody, this probably is the next level of what we're going to see, and we're already beginning to see it. Some of it is loss of life. You know, you hear these crime shows where people do certain things and it just keeps escalating. Well, that's the way these guys are. So I've been doom and gloom for all of this, and I just want to, I put this little image up, basically brighten things up, I guess. But the solutions are, I've said it, I can't emphasize this enough, OT and IT got to work together and really take an assessment of where you stand. Inside your company, everybody needs to be cyber aware. Engage everybody in the process. You know, I brought people in and sit down and just kind of explain them what it is that we're doing. And usually what hits home the most is if the brand damage happens, you may not have a job. You know, we get sued to death. If you're not doing phishing campaigns, do them. And do follow-up. So if somebody flunks, it's not to go in and beat them over the head, but let them know, hey, you need to pay a little closer attention. System. I can't stress this one enough. Know your system. We have a particular customer that doesn't know where his supervisory controller is on it anywhere in the building. And take over management of your users. You have to do that. And put your system behind a hard network. You're not going to fix the vulnerabilities of the control system and the end devices in any short order. So the least you can do is get it behind a hard network. And then make sure that the only people that have access to it have a username and password in the system. A lot of stuff, and guys, I'm kind of running through a lot of scenarios here, and I know it's a whole bunch, but the main point that I want to get across is control systems. It's not necessarily anybody's fault per se, because the world was a different world. So system integrators, we just did what the customer wanted us to do, not putting it all on the customer, but we could have advised, we could have done some things on our ahead of time. So you got to look at it this way. You can't eat the elephant all in one bite. So what I mean about that is, I think you guys know what the cliche is pick those low-hanging fruits, decide which ones you can do with little or no money that are, can impact greatly, which is the username, password, behind the firewall, so on and so forth. And then just work your way through the list. But as you saw earlier, if you're not doing due diligence to some degree, you could run into a situation where the bad guy hacks you, loss of brand damage, and then the FTC or SEC could come after you. And the control system industry is working, or the integrators and control system vendors and manufacturers are working on these problems. But the one thing you got to remember is the financial cost to the equipment, budgeting for your people part of it. But at the end of the day, I got bad news for you. 100%, you're not going to secure it 100%. All you can do is what you can do. Just make sure that you're moving forward. And that pretty much is it, guys. If you have any questions, please feel free. You can text them to me or whatever the case may be. I want to thank y'all for your time. I appreciate y'all coming into this session, and I want to thank the Critical Facilities Group for allowing me this opportunity. So thank you.